Hi, everyone, and welcome to the 5th episode, I think we're on now, of the Ben and Danny show. So last Thursday, I think we talked about, I know we talked about what colliders are, how to move a character around the scene, and then we kind of touched bases on physics and rigid bodies and all of those kinds of components. So if you want to know more about that, please go along and watch that episode. It is on our YouTube channel along with all the other episodes. So Ben, what are we doing in today's episode then?
It seems to be a kind of feature.
I think I've just come up with like a script of like, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's all good. So yeah, I mean, from last time we looked at, I think we looked mostly at prefabs, like Danny said.
Right, yeah, prefabs.
And we looked at
that's a pretty important thing I just forgot.
No, it's all good. We looked at prefabs. We looked at physics, if you remember. We looked at colliders and rigid bodies, so making things actually react to the environment and stuff. And we looked at specifically in that we looked at things like constraints. So we want a 2D character that doesn't kind of tip and topple around, does flips when it hits the wall. We don't want that, so we had a look at that. So today's episode, we're looking kind of in each of these episodes. I think one follows on to the next, and we've started on the first episode and we've gone from something that's quite gentle into a bit more, and today's episode is essentially the same, because what we're going to do is we're going to look at even more collision detection. So last time we looked at introducing collision detection and physics, this kind of stuff. Now we have looked at colliders, right? We know what colliders are, we know what triggers are, we discussed that, but we haven't actually looked at how to detect collision, right? Collision detection. You probably heard me and Danny go on about it last episode.
Episode, yeah.
Collision detection, this,
remember
collision
this?
detection, that. Yeah.
Collision detection, yeah.
Yeah. But if you've probably noticed, we haven't actually detected any collisions yet. We have essentially just added colliders. So what we're going to actually do today is we're going to do some actual collision detection. So in the code itself, we're going to detect some collisions, and hopefully everything works without hitch. Famous last words.
Yeah, you kind of jinxed us there now, Ben.
Yeah. So yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to look at how to actually, the player throughout the game, right? We're going to have to at some point introduce enemies, and when we introduce enemies, we're going to have to do something when the player hits them. So in games like Mario, for example, you might stomp on the enemy and it gets rid of the enemy. In our case, when we hit an enemy, we want to kill the player, for want of a better word.
Yeah. Not sure. Yeah, basically, yeah.
Yeah,
game over.
Yeah, we want to respawn the player and go, well, you died, so try again, sort of thing. That is a problem of collision detection, because if they've hit an enemy or a spike or something, or they fell off the screen, we want to be able to respawn them. So how do we detect that? Well, that's what collision detection is. So we're going to get into the code today behind collision detection, and it might be a bit daunting, but it's fairly straightforward. We'll go through it quite slowly, so it should be all right. And as part of this as well, we're going to look at collecting diamonds, right? So remember, we brought in these diamonds into the game. We're going to have a look at triggers. So how to, when we jump into the diamond, we can actually start doing something like, disable the diamond and add one to the score, this kind of stuff. So that's what we're going to do. And if we have time, I don't think we will have time because of some of the stuff we cover here. But if we do, we might look at some lives, like player lives, and the canvas in Unity. So yeah, I think that's largely what we're going to cover today.
Sounds exciting stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, on that note, I can go to the screen and we could get started, I guess. So just to give you a bit more information, so just with collision detection in mind, what we're going to do, what we're going to implement, I want to talk about what we're going to do before we actually do it. I mean, that makes sense. So we're going to introduce how to actually, as I said, interact with collision detection, so how we can actually detect collisions and do stuff based on when we hit something, right? So the player death is just going to be a standard kind of obstacle collision. So when the player hits something or when the player falls off the screen, then we want to respawn the player. So we're going to do, there's a couple of parts for that. So the first is, how do we detect when the player hits something like an enemy or falls off the screen? So we're going to look at those two first, and then we're going to have a look at the secondary problem, which is how do we respawn the player at a specific point. On that note, we're going to have a look at, we could go down the way of tags in the editor. So tags are quite a useful feature in Unity, and at some point today we're going to cover them. So be prepared. But yeah, we're going to go through that, and then finally, yeah, we're going to do some collecting diamonds. So I think the way
collect the shiny thing.
Yeah. I think the way me and Danny designed this game initially is, and I think we'll probably do the same actually, is we have, say you have 5 diamonds in the scene. You've got to collect all 5 diamonds before a door opens, like a door appears, and then you can go through the door and go to the next level. So the objective of the game is to collect all the diamonds. Once you've collected all the diamonds without dying, then the door appears and you can go through that door to the next level.
So it's like in Mario when you collect all the stars to then, I don't know, you get a medal. Wow, I realise I haven't played those games in ages, but it's like collecting the stars. You've got to collect them all to get the achievement. You can't die.
Yeah, there's so I think, yeah, in Mario, essentially, yeah, you collect the stars, or if you play Odyssey, the moons, you know, and then eventually you're allowed to go on to the next land. It's sort of the same thing. In fact, if you play Super Mario Maker 2, some of the levels have these keys, right, that you've got to collect all 3 keys, and then it unlocks a door, and then you can go through it. It's essentially the same idea. The reason we put this in is solely so we can show you how to do collision detection, and then with that collision detection actually interact with something that, you know, opens the door whenever we've collected all of those, because it's an interesting problem. So we're going to get onto that. They're the main 2 things we're going to look at today. But first, I suppose we should get onto collision detection. So I know we talked a lot about it last time. We were talking about colliders and triggers, and the reason we did was so that in this episode we can actually start using them in the code, because it would have been terrible if we, you know, we opened up the editor today and we're like, oh, okay, let's do collision detection. Let's just add a collider.
What's a collider?
Yeah.
You already know what that is from last week's episode, but from last Thursday's episode.
Yeah. So like here on the right, we've got a transform, we've got the sprite renderer, we've got the character movement. Remember, we made the character jump and move around, and we had a rigid body 2D to make the character react with gravity. And we had a capsule collider. So do you remember we edited this? Well, you can't see it very well, but you see this kind of round circle here that we edited. That's the collider, right? And we can change the size of it. We can make it go bigger or wider, whatever. But we've just showed you colliders. We haven't actually showed you how to detect collisions with things. So that's what we're going to do. And I know I keep saying this, but I just want to, drum the point home that that's the difference between last time and this time. So I suppose the question is, how do you actually do that? How do you actually do that? Well, I think probably the best way, and I don't know if Danny agrees with me here, is because I don't know if you've noticed. You probably have noticed, but this is largely just unscreening. We just kind of make it up,
Making up as we go along.
So I don't know if Danny agrees with me here, but we could. I think one of the easiest ways to show you is to just put a simple like square object or a circle or something into the environment, and when the player hits that, we could just show, hey, you've collided with it, or something, just to show you the basics of it.
Yeah, it's just to show you how the mechanics work before we actually get into like enemy implementation.
Yeah, so I mean this stuff will be, it will just be colliding with a with a square in the environment. You might think, well, that's you. And I don't want squares in my game. I want enemies, right? And yeah, that's fair. I understand. But essentially, we can do the same thing, right? But we can replace that square with an enemy, and hey presto, we've got enemies in our game, right? So the idea is we're just kind of going to show you the logic of it. So with all that out of the way, let's actually get on to doing stuff. Finally, I feel like I talk way too much in the beginning of these things.
I mean, no, because you need to discuss what we're going to do and discuss what's happening. So yeah, but let's get into it then, Ben.
Yeah. So if we go here and we'll just go make a new game object. So we go to 2D object like we did before. We'll go to sprites, so we can make all kinds of stuff. You know, we can make sprite shapes. To be honest, I'm not exactly. Oh, I know what sprite shapes are. Tile maps, physics. But we're going to make a square, right? This is just a square on the screen. That's it, really.
Are we sure it's a square, Ben?
Yeah. Is it a rectangle? When does it start becoming a long rectangle like this?
You know? Shapes with Ben and Danny.
Yeah.
Welcome back.
So I'm gonna put like a kind of rectangle here, right? And I'm just gonna leave it here. So what we want to do, and you know, imagine this was our enemy or something, right? If we, well, actually, let's put it on the floor. It probably makes more sense to kind of. I'll just move this round so we can set this to 90 degrees, and then I'll move this little box here. So if the player hits this box here, they will unfortunately perish, pass on into the ether. Yeah. So
where all good cartoons go.
Yeah. So one thing worth noting about collisions and stuff is, in order for a collision or a trigger to be activated, at least one of the two colliding things has to have a rigid body. In our case, that's fine because the character has a rigid body and moves around the environment. Now, you might notice at the moment, if I play this game here, so here, and I move around, we just go straight through the square. And if you know, if we talked about colliders last time, and you might be shouting at the screen, going, "Oh, we need a collider." Well, yeah, well, you'd be exactly right. So if we add a box collider to this, right, and we press play, and we go down here, we should be able to. Yeah, we're now standing on the box. It's a physical object, right? But what we want to do is when the player touches this box, we want to firstly just show, hey, you've collided with it, right? So how do we do that? Well, okay, let's make a new script. You could do this in one of these scripts, but I'd advise. I don't know if you can hear that's a very loud car outside. So we're going to make a new script. I'll call this something like. Well, we're going to get onto player death, so making the player respawn. So I'm going to call this player death.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. So I've just made this new script, and here we go. So it's here, and I'm going to put this on the character. So I'm just going to pop open the prefab here and put on the player death detection script, just like we did before. PDD, yeah. And now we have a death detection script, so we can actually start doing stuff with this script. So you might notice as well, we have two scripts on this character now. So both of these will run code. So this will still work. We'll still be able to jump. We will also be able to do stuff in here as well. So as you can see, I can quite easily run the game, and it works just as expected, right? But it's got two scripts attached to it. There's two script components attached to this player. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to open this script, double click it, and we get the standard. You've seen this stuff before. You know, we've got void start, void update. I'm sorry for the noise outside. I don't know what's going on out there. It sounds like a car chase or something. Loud car, sirens.
Oh,
let's all go here in Lincoln.
Dramatic in Lincoln.
Yeah. So what we're going to do, first off, is we don't need these for now, these void start and void update. So I'll leave them in, but I'm just going to leave them there with nothing in them. What we're going to do is do type void and type on. Now you'll notice that there are tons of events here that we can look at. So there's on destroy, on disable, on blah, blah, blah. One of them is on collision, and this is on collision enter, on collision exit, on collision stay, all of these different things, right? Now, what these do, and I'll talk about this in a second, but there are many different functions we can use for collision detection. So there is just like I'll put this here. So we've got private void on collision enter 2D. So there's really three types of collision functions. There's collision enter, right? There's collision exit, okay, and finally there is collision stay. Okay, so what enter is when you first when you have the character here and you have the object here, when the character first touches that object, that's when you enter the collision. So this function here, this bit of code here, is ran when that collision enters, because it's called on collision enter 2D. I'll get onto the 2D bit in a second, but it's fairly straightforward. On collision exit, as you can probably imagine now, is when you exit that collision. Okay, so when things are colliding, when they first touch, it's called entering the collision. When they pull apart, that's when the collision is exited, because they're not touching anymore. And when the collision stays, you can probably guess it's when they're just like that, you know. That's probably the best way to explain it. This is what we want. Is when we first touch the thing that we want to detect collision on, we want to initially say, hey, you've collided with something. So that's what this function is all about. Now there is on collision enter, which is the 3D version. It gets confusing. Again, this is because Unity initially was a 3D games engine, but they went, oh, we need to do 2D games. So they just went, what do we call the new collision function? Oh, I can't think of a name.
2D on the end of everything.
Yeah, I can't think of a name. Oh God, what about on collision enter 2D? Oh, brilliant. Yes. So that's why it's called that. But if you want to do it with 3D objects, it's just called on collision enter. And you know, if you wanted to detect when we exit the collision, let's do that. Why not, right? So on collision exit 2D, if we press that, this is on collision exit. So if I do debug.log in here to just show the collision has exited something, right? And we put one in here and say the collision has entered, right? Now we have a script that does nothing but just detect when we touch something and when we come out from that collision. So let's see what happens when we jump around in the environment.
Jump around.
Yeah. So you
completely random.
It was very random. So if we jump around in this environment here, you might notice already we've got the collision has entered. If I jump, you can see it says the collision has exited. The collision has entered. And this is detecting. As you can see, when I hit the floor, it says the collision has entered. When I jump up, it says it's exited. This is doing exactly what we want, right? But you know, and if we jump onto this square here, if I jump on here, it says, oh yeah, the collision's entered, it's exited. As you can see, right, it is correctly working. However, this isn't what we want, right? This is detecting collision with everything, absolutely everything. Anything that has a collider, it's like, yeah, I've collided, of course, you know, I've collided with something. So how do we? What we need to do is essentially filter out which things we care about collisions with. So what we want to say is, if the thing we've collided with is this square right here, then show the message. So how can we do that? Well, it's a good question. We could do it many ways. We could actually say, is the name of this object the same? Is the object itself the same? Does it have a tag? There's many different ways of doing this, and I will prompt Danni and put her on the spot and say, how do you think we should do it, Danni?
What do you mean, Ben?
It's not a test. I'm just.
For some reason, my brain's just gone.
No, it's
So
okay.
you mean like how do we want to physically detect?
Yeah. So
Or
I
like
mean,
using on collision enter or using on trigger enter?
no.
Or do you mean like using?
Yes. So we are colliding with everything in the environment now. So if I touch the wall, it says, "Oh, it's entered. Oh, it's exited." What we want to do essentially is just when we jump, we only want to detect messages.
I mean, as we said earlier, we could use tags.
We could use tags, yeah. So I'll show you a couple of ways of doing them. One way we could do it. So I suppose there's a few main ways of doing it. We could do, is the object the same object that we have in the public variable thing? I don't know how to best describe that. But if we have game object here, right, and we have let's call it target object or something, right? What we can do is we can say if collision dot I think it's game object is equal to target object. So what collision dot game object is it's, I'm pretty sure, and I might be wrong here, it might be dot other collider, but we'll see. Is equal to target object, then show the collision has entered. Okay, so let's do this and see what happens. So let's run that. So what it's going to do is, hopefully this means the other object. If not, we'll very quickly change that out. If it is equal to this thing here, target object, then say the collision is entered. Okay, now you might be wondering, what is that target object thing? Well, if we click on the character, you'll see that we have something called target object here now, and we can, and this is quite cool, we can take this square, which we want the target object to be, and drag it right into here. So now whenever the script sees target object, it means this object, this square. So we're saying, is the object you've collided with, is it that square? And that's what we're saying. So I'm just going to quickly save this scene and not open project. Jesus. I'm going to save the project, and then I'm going to click run, and let's see what this does. If it's wrong, that's okay. Yeah, it is wrong. As you can see, it's still doing the same thing. So this is my bad, because I forgot which one is the right one. So if you do so collision dot other collider.
Well, you still have the other the on collision exit active. Did you want that active still?
I can comment it out for now. Yeah, we can comment that out. That's a good point. So collision.othercollider.gameObject. This means, so collision.gameObject is, because this script is attached to the player, it means the player. So in a collision, there's always, well, most of the time there's two things that are colliding. So the other collider is the thing that the player is touching, if that makes sense, because the script is on the player. So collision.gameObject is the player, just as gameObject is the player. Other collider is the other thing, right? It's the square. So if we run this, we should only see messages. We should only.
We had a null.
Did I get an error? Let's see. Let's run it and see what happens. It's okay. The collision has entered. Oh, have I assigned it properly? Yes. So that's an interesting one. Yeah, I'm not too sure exactly what's happening there. I think, hang on, have I got the squares there, the squares on this, and the box colliders there? I think, yeah, I think it might not have just compiled correctly. Let's have a quick look. So if collision.othercollider, the other collider.gameObject is equal to target object, which is up here, then show the collision has entered. We can do this another way if this doesn't work, so don't worry about it.
A lot of coding. It is a lot of just trial and error to see things do work.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure what's going on there, but who knows? Collision dot. There must be another one.
Okay, this might just be me. Do you need the like? Wow, the name of the. Do you need the curly bracket things around the if?
Oh no, we should be fine. Should be fine.
All right, okay. That's just my style of coding.
Yeah, I think it might be other collider. I think this equality isn't well, it's comparing two game objects isn't the best idea. I think that's what is going on here. We could do, for example, name equals target object dot name, right, which would essentially do the same thing, but check the name instead. So let's have a look and see if this works. This is another way to do it, but I'll show you an even better way, which is what I was going to get onto. I was going to kind of show you that and go, oh no, look at this issue, and how can we solve this? Oh no, this is doing the same as well. That's weird. That is strange. I guess. Oh, I think I know why it is. Do you know why it is? Can you see it, Danny? Do you know why it is? Look at this giant box. Look at this giant box we've got here.
What is the giant? Isn't that the?
It's the collider. I'm pretty sure. The
No, isn't it? Isn't that not the camera?
no, no. I think we've got. Oh no, it is the thing.
It is the camera.
What is going on here?
Wait, is there a collider on the camera?
Well, that's what I was thinking, but I don't think we do have that. I have no idea.
Click on the main camera thing.
No, we don't have one.
No. Weird.
How strange. But that should be working. I'm probably missing something. It's been a long day. That's what I can.
It has been a long day.
And again, what's the collider like on the square? Have we got? Is that pretty big?
Box collider.
No, that's okay. So I tell you what we'll do. Do a little bit of debugging. Right. Let's do this. Let's put that in there and put in target. Let's do collision.othercollider.name. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take out this condition and just show whatever this thing is colliding with, so we can kind of see if it's that condition which is firing it. So let's have a look and see what this does. If not, again, we can kind of go another route, so it's okay. I just want to make sure that this isn't just me. Yeah, so the collision is entered character. So it seems like it's okay, right. So that is other collider.name. Okay, so collision.gameObject, I might have been right. Collision.gameObject.name is equal to, let's have a look. Let's have a look and see what is going on. Foreground. Oh, okay. Foreground square. Okay, so initially I was right, yeah. So now you can see we've got square here, right? So in this case, other collider is not the player. In fact, for some reason, other collider is the player. So essentially, if we swap this round to be not other collider, but in fact, gameObject.name is equal to this, then we should have.
So you're right in the beginning.
Yeah, but for some reason, I don't know. I just missed it. So, anyways, that is. You'll find this in games development. I mean, I've been doing this for absolutely years, but I still come across stuff like this, and you'll spend about 5-10 minutes going, "Why isn't that working?"
Why isn't it working? What?
Now, as you can see, I'm jumping around the environment. It's not showing anything. Ignore this error there. But as you can see, nothing's happening. But as soon as I jump into this square, you can see it says the collision is entered, square. Right? That's exactly what we wanted. And what we're doing is we're just checking the name of whatever this target object is, this square here. So it's just checking whatever the name is against that square. So you can do it with name. You can do it this way. This probably was the issue in the first place. It's not a good idea to compare game objects because they're compared by reference. But another way, and I suppose one of the issues you can foresee with this is, what if I had another object called square, right? But we didn't want to collide with it. That's quite troublesome, right? How do we get around that? Or what if, for example, we had many objects with different names and we wanted to check if it was just one of those objects? How do we do that, right? So if we had maybe, for example, different enemies. Now the enemies are going to have different names. Maybe one's called enemy 1, maybe one's called enemy 9. We could do it by doing something like, something like this, where if, name is equal to blah, or name is equal to blah 2, or, name is equal to blah 3. And for those of you who probably have a bit of programming experience, you go, oh well, you know, you could just put the names in an array and just loop over the array and check if it's one of them. But it's not a great solution. But is there a way, right, where we could kind of just say, okay, well, all these enemies, I want to just detect this group of things, right? And that's where tags come in. Okay. Now tags are a great little tool. So what you can do is, if you come up here to the top right, you've probably noticed this little menu here called tag. And there's a bunch of different tags. There's main camera, respawn, player, game controller. You can add your own tags. So you can click on add tag here, and you can click this little plus button and add a tag. So I'm going to put in enemy. Okay. So let's go back to the square, and we can set the tag to enemy. Okay. This is what tags are used for. We can give an object a tag. Okay.
It's kind of giving it like a label. You can group, like as we said, like the enemies. We can group the enemies together. Like even if there are like loads of different enemies and there are loads of different like variety of enemy, if you put them under tag, then they'll label them all as the enemy, and they'll all listen to the enemy tag. And like, oh yeah, if we reference that, oh yeah, we're bumping into the enemy, then we die, kind of thing. So we don't have to like. It's just grouping them all together.
Yeah. So
level of tag.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's many different ways, you know, we could have done this. We could have, you know, done if name is equal to something else, or if something is this, and we could put the names in an array, for example, right? But tags, like Danny says, is a great way of getting around this. Great way of getting around this. So we can give loads of enemies the same tag. We can make essentially an enemy group and check if the objects we've hit is in that enemy group. So now our square has the tag enemy. We could duplicate this, make another square, and put it maybe, I don't know, here or something, right? So this is a square, and we could call this something like, you know, something completely different, like something like that, right? Or that. So now we have two objects with completely different names, but the same tag. And what we can do, and the most important part is, we can change this condition to we can do collision.gameObject.name. That will give us the name of the object. We can do dot equals, so check if it's equal to, actually dot name is wrong, ignore me. Dot tag, here we go. There is a function here called compare tag, which essentially will do the same thing. The tag gets the tag of that thing. So we can say, is the tag equal to this? Is the tag equal to something else, right? Compare tag does that for us. So I like using compare tag, because what we can do is we can say, is the tag equal to enemy, right? And if it's equal to enemy, then we can say the collision has entered. Okay.
We have a question in the chat, Ben, if you hadn't seen.
Yeah.
MJ asks, they're completely new to these videos. Are we programming in pure C#?
So that's a good question. I mean, so Unity uses C# for its scripting language, but if you mean pure C# in terms of, you know, if it's .NET or something like UWP, or for actually, you know, just developing applications in general, I guess yes, we are developing in just C#. Like this is just C#, right? It inherits from a mono behavior class. There are some like differences, like a lot of the functions we're using.
The Unity functions and all. Unity has its own like specific functions and elements that it uses, like the on collision enter and the collide stuff. Yeah.
So we are using C# in the sense of pure. If you mean the sense of pure as in, are we using that language? We are using C#, but we're not using C# for any kind of like .NET applications. It's just a lot of it is using the Unity engine and stuff. And also, if C#, you know, I recognize that we've gone from no C# knowledge to loads of C# knowledge. If it is a bit confusing, there are loads of tutorials out there that for learning C#. And in fact, there's Python programming tutorials on the channel that you can check out. But yeah, hopefully that helps. So what we're doing is we're saying get the tag of this object, okay, and we're saying, is that tag equal to enemy? If it is, then show this. Okay, so let's run this and see what happens. So now what we should be able to do is hit either of these two with completely different names, but because they're both tagged as enemies, look, it says, oh, the collision is entered, you know, that. So we'll have like, yeah, collision's entered, and then here, yeah, we get another one. So we can actually tag enemies.
I'm loving the name.
Yeah, great names, aren't they?
I don't know how. I must have just like missed that when you typed them in.
Yeah. But we have two completely different objects here, but they're both tagged as enemies. So whenever we hit something with the tag enemy, we can do a specific thing. Okay, that's part one of this whole player death thing sorted, and we've gone into a lot of detail of collisions and stuff, because part of what, as you can imagine, what's going to happen with the diamonds is essentially the same thing. All we have to do is check. We can give this all these diamonds a tag of diamond, because they're just a group of things. They have different names, they have different properties and all kinds of stuff, even though they're the same prefab. They have different positions, all kinds of stuff. But they are a group of things, you know? All the diamonds are a group of, well, diamonds, you know, they are all the same in the sense that, you know, if you hit one, you want to be able to detect it, that it's a diamond. Just like if you have many enemies, you want to be able to detect, even if they're different heights, different behaviors, you want to detect if you hit a enemy. You don't really care what enemy it is, as long as you hit a enemy. It's the same with diamonds, and we're going to get onto that, and that's why we've talked about tags and collisions in so much detail. So yeah, hopefully all this makes sense so far. So I suppose the next part of the player death, and by the way, in future episodes, just to clarify here, we are going to change these from squares, right? The idea is that these are just squares, just to give you the very basics of how to do collision detection. But at some point, we're going to change these squares into little enemies, right? And then them enemies can kind of move around the environment. But essentially, the logic of hitting something and then respawning the player based on that is something that we're going to do today. So that's, hopefully that all makes sense. So yeah, so we've done the first bit where we've detected if they've hit an enemy. Okay, but now the next bit is, and I'll get rid of this collision exit because we're not going to use it. But you know, you can imagine the same thing here applies. You know, you can check if they've exited a collision from the enemy and so forth. What we want to do is essentially, instead of saying the collision has entered, we want to actually respawn the player, put them somewhere. Okay, or maybe, like I said, in future things, we can decrement the lives. You know, we can maybe start off with 5 lives, and then when they hit an enemy, we can take 1 life off, and you know, and then if their lives reach 0, we can say, hey, game over. You know, so yeah, what we're going to do is the next bit. Okay, so respawning the player. Now luckily for us, this is the easiest bit. This is pretty straightforward. Okay, so all we need to do for this is we can make, generally this is the way you do it, is you make a little 2D object. Okay, we're going to make a circle. Okay, and let's say this is going to be our respawn point. So I'm going to call this, could be something better. I'm gonna call these things. So this is enemy 1, okay, and it's just a square, and enemy 2, okay, and then this circle we're going to call the respawn point. Okay, now you might think, well, that looks terrible. You don't want a physical circle in the game. That's a bit weird. But bear with me. Like for now, we're going to leave it in. But we can turn off this renderer and make it invisible at a later point. So how do we get the player to go back to this when they hit an enemy? Well, it's fairly straightforward. It's very similar to this stuff. So this thing here is the target object. So the target object, it's probably not the best name, actually. I think we're not using target object anymore because, as you can see in the code, we're not using target object. So we can essentially rename this to spawn point, right? The spawn point object. So what we'll have now is when we go back to our script and we click on the player, we'll have a little box that we can here, you know, spawn point object that we can drag into the thing. So we click and drag our respawn point and just drag it over here, And now we've got the respawn point. If you don't want to click and drag, by the way, you can click this little circle thing here on the right, and it gives you a list of things in your scene. So, you could click enemy 1, enemy 2, or respawn point. So we're going to click respawn point here. I'm going to save the scene out of habit. And
I mean, it's a good habit to get into.
Yeah. So now, whenever the script looks for the word spawn point object, because we've put this respawn point into that box, that's what it's going to be. It's going to refer to this object. And that's great, because now we can do things like something fairly straightforward. We're going to leave this in. So we're going to say show a message. And what we're going to do, the next part, is to actually put them in that respawn point. Okay, so how do we do that? So move the player to the respawn point. So how do you do this? Well, it's fairly straightforward. We just do transform.position. So transform refers to, if I hover over, you probably see the transform attached to this game object. Now this script is going to be attached to the player. So transform is referring to the player's transform, the player's position, the player's rotation, the player's scale. You can probably see why now we talked so much about transforms in the beginning, because it's and components and this kind of stuff, because it's good to understand these concepts for this. So all we have to do is do transform.position equals, okay, so we're setting, this is setting the player's position, and we've got the spawn point object here. We just do the spawn point object dot transform dot position. Okay, so all we're doing is we're just moving the player's position. We're setting the player's position to the position of the spawn point, right? It's as easy as that, really. So now, hopefully,
Simple as pie.
Yeah.
Simple as pie.
Simple as pie.
Is that the phrasing?
Simple as pie. I think so. Easy as pie.
Easy as pie. There we go.
Yeah.
Simple as pie did not sound right.
So if we click play, right, we should be able to. Here's hoping. If I jump onto this here, we get put back into the respawn point. So we could do something alongside that, right? So all we're doing is we're just going, when they've hit the box, we're just setting the position to this little circle. Okay, so it's physically just, you can imagine this. If you're a bit confused about what's happening is, you're bobbing along here going do, and then you jump, you hit this thing here, and the computer goes, okay, you've hit that box, so I need to move you all the way up here, and then it starts again. That's all that's happening here. It's not very elaborate, and what we can do is we can, be a little, well, I would say, I was going to say cheeky, but
I literally knew you were going to say be a bit cheeky with that.
And alongside this, we could do something. We don't have to stop here, right? We could do something like decrement the lives. So if we had a lives variable, we could do lives equal lives -1, or lives minus. We could decrement the lives that way, and then do if lives is less than 0, then game over. Something like that. But you can see why collision detection is so powerful in games, because I mean, in this short little function here, we've made the player die and respawn. Now, in later episodes, yes, we are going to get into lives and stuff, so we will be revisiting this script and putting stuff into it. But for now, that's what we've got. So I just wanted to show you how to do that. Now, so that's really the player death. And if you want to turn off this circle, if you just click on the circle here, or respawn point, you can turn off this sprite renderer here. So now it's not actually showing anything, but it still exists and it's still there. So if you click play and you jump into an enemy, oh look, you get respawned, yippee, so now I realize we've talked quite a lot about that, and that it's used up most of the time that we've of this session. But the reason for that is that I wanted to go into a lot of detail regarding collision detection and how to do it, because now, just if I tasked you with doing the same for the diamonds, it's pretty straightforward, right? It's essentially the same process. All you have to do is give these diamonds a tag. So let's do that. Let's make a
Did you want to do it in the prefab?
Yes, That is a very good idea. Yes.
Make use of those prefabs.
Yeah.
Then.
See, I mean, it's just.
I mean,
yeah.
I forget about prefabs and like I don't know. I think you get into the habit when you first learn. You get into the habit of just doing it individually, and then you're like, wait,
Yeah.
there's an actual thing within Unity that helps me out and saves me so much time.
Yeah, exactly. So now all of these have diamonds, the diamond tag, right? So all of these have the tag diamond. So we can now detect if the player has hit a diamond. So we can make another script, right? And we can call this player diamond collection or something, right? So now we can drag this onto the player as well. Okay, so we've got the player. And as you can see, we have separate scripts for separate systems. We've got one script for moving the character around. We've got one for detecting if they've died. And we've got another for collecting diamonds, right? So we can drag this on. Oh, that's diamond bobbing. That's the wrong script. We can drag this on. And it says player diamond collection. So now we have three separate scripts that are doing three completely different things. And that's the beauty of this kind of game engine, is it makes so much more sense to have separate systems attached to the character or whatever. I'm just going to apply.
It keeps the code organized as well. Like if I literally want to go to, well, it's if something breaks. Like if the diamond collection breaks, you can single out that script and go, okay, let's debug it. What's working, or why is it working this way? So it's just very easy to like find errors on your code, and it's just for organization as well, and for everyone. If anyone else looks at your code, they can have a look at individual functions and scripts and understand it quite easily.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, one of the best things about this is, say for example, you have an error, a weird error happening, and you think that it is going to be, it's somewhere in the player death detection script. Well, what you can do is you just tick it off, right? And then just play the game. And oh, look, it's not happening anymore. Okay, it must be in the script. Like Danny said, it's really good for debugging. And it's a good idea to not put everything in one script, but have separate scripts for different things. Yeah, that's probably the best advice I can give you. So yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing, but for diamonds. Now, we need to edit the diamond prefab because at the moment they don't really have any colliders, right? So we're going to put on a collider. So we'll just put a box collider here. I'll maybe edit this to make it a little bit smaller, so something like this. So now this diamond has a little collider that, you know, if we hit it, it will activate, and so forth. So you might have heard us mention colliders and triggers, okay? And I think we mentioned last time this is trigger thing. Now, just to revisit that, a collider is when something is solid in the environment, and a trigger is when something isn't solid, but we just want to, you know, detect if that collision's there. And I don't know if Danny has a good analogy for this, but I can't think of something.
Right. So with like collision, yeah, okay. So with like on collision enter, you have yeah, we'll go to the car example. So if you're on collision enter, you have a solid car and a solid wall. And when you hit the wall, you crash. So that's a solid interaction of two game objects. But with on trigger, it's like the car kind of going across a finish line. It's not like it's not an entirely solid object, but once the car crosses that finish line, you want to say, oh, well done, congratulations, you finished the race. So that's kind of where you'd probably use on trigger. It's not a solid, it's not quite a solid game object, but it's a way of like you're entering that kind of collider to then something to happen. So as I said, yeah, the game entering the finish line, so then you've completed a race.
Yeah, so that's a really good way of thinking about it, right? So just to reiterate that and kind of, well, essentially say the same thing but in a different way. If you had a wall and you had a car, if you were sat there, you know, on a I don't know why, but I'm imagining a deck chair. If you're sat there on a deck chair, right, and there's a car speeding towards a wall, and you know it's very clear that it's going to hit the wall.
But can you just imagine that scenario?
Yeah, that's a very strange scenario. But imagine you're in the deck chair, right, and there's a car speeding towards the wall, and there's a wall. Those two things are, physically solid objects. How will you know when they collide? Well, you'll hear a massive crash. You'll see the car crumple. Clearly, what's happening is the car is hitting the wall and bouncing off because they're both physical objects, right? But you can still tell when they collide. That's what on collision enter is like. Two solid objects hitting each other, they bounce off each other. Now, on trigger enter is, like Danny said, a really good way of thinking about this is like a finish line, right? A finish line isn't solid. When you cross a finish line, you don't abruptly stop and crash into a wall, because that doesn't make any sense. Because a finish line is just a painted line on the floor, right? But you still want to kind of detect a collision there. You want to make sure, you want to detect when a car has just touched that finish line, but you don't want the same kind of crash thing, because
you don't want that bounce. You don't want to bounce off the finish line. You want to just go through it.
Yeah, because that would make Formula One a lot more boring.
Well, I don't know. Excited for the race this weekend.
Yeah, probably not boring, but very drastic. That'd be horrendous. Lap one, everybody crashes. It's, but the point I'm trying to get at
is a quick race, though. Yeah. A very expensive one, but quick.
Yeah. But it's the same thing. You want to detect when you're touching that finish line, but you don't want to give the same collision response. That's the difference between triggers, which don't have any kind of solid properties, and collisions, which are actual physical things. So in that case, think about these diamonds. When we jump up to hit a diamond, we don't want to bounce off the diamond. We just want to kind of go through it. We don't want the player to abruptly stop. So what we're going to do is tick is trigger, right? And as it says, it's just whether the collider behaves as a trigger or not. So we're going to do that, and then let's go back. And now all our diamonds should have a 2D box collider that are all triggers. So now all of these are triggers. Brilliant. Okay, so that's step one done. Let's open up our diamond collection thing, and let's actually start writing some code to do diamonds. So I'm going to take these out. The one difference is you might have noticed on collision enter, right? So what we're going to look at is on trigger enter. Okay, so on trigger enter is essentially the same thing, but it's just for triggers. Okay, so on trigger enter it's the same as on collision enter, but it's when you want to detect a trigger, not a collision, and that's why we're making the distinction. So what we can do, just to test this, let's do something like let's do this. Let's do collision.gameObject.tag. Not tag, sorry. Oh no, yeah, we are doing tag. Compare tag diamond. So we want to check if this thing is a diamond. If it is a diamond, so the object we're colliding with is a diamond, then we want to say hit diamond, right? And what I'll do as well is I'll just take out this debug.log so it doesn't clutter up the console. So let's just try this, right? So this hopefully should work. All we're doing really is we're just doing this.
I love that. Hopefully, sorry.
Yeah,
it's just always a kiss of death.
Yeah,
honestly is.
It's essentially the same code we had before, but we just put it in on trigger, right? So it should be fine. But let's have a look. So hit a diamond. As you can see, it says hit diamond. I hit an enemy, so it respawns me. But as you can see, it's saying hit diamond every time I hit a diamond, which is perfect. Because now what we can do is we can start doing things with the diamond. So think about it. What do we want to do when we hit the diamond? Well, there's probably two things, and we'll list these out, right? We don't want to do this because it's pretty useless, right?
Yeah.
It's not really
doesn't really have an impact on the game.
Yeah. I imagine the things we want to do is we want to make the diamond disappear, and we want to somehow like add something to the score, right? Now, for now, we are not going to we're not going to look at the score and adding stuff to the score. But we are going to do this. We're going to make the diamond disappear. We are going to touch on this later, I promise. But the more we get into it, it should become kind of clear. But we need to set up a score system and all that kind of stuff. So let's make the diamond disappear. How can we do this? Well, you might have noticed in here, let's have a look. Let's go to this diamond. You might have noticed this tick box up here. So what this does is it disables the object. So this object is still in the environment, but none of the scripts or the components will work. So essentially, we're turning off that object, but it still exists. That's a bit confusing, I guess. But
well, no, it's kind of like disabled. Like it's you can't see it. I mean, it's still there, but you can't see it. You can't interact with it. You can't none of the scripts will work, as you said.
Yeah. So just as an example, right? What happens? How do we turn this on and off in the code, right? Well, it's fairly easy. All we do is we do collision.gameObject, which is it's the diamond that we're hitting, right? We just do set active, okay, and we're just doing false. So if this is false, it turns it off. If it's true, it turns it on. Okay, pretty straightforward. So if we
there's nothing really much to it.
No. So we could do something like this. We could save the project, and now if we jump into a diamond, you'll notice that it just disappears. So now we have something that's starting to look a little bit more like a game.
We can fly.
I haven't. We haven't fixed the jump yet. So.
I quite like the flying, but yeah.
it's not much of a game, but yeah, as you can see, we've collected all 3 diamonds, right? Now, I suppose we've got a little bit of time. We could let's do something like we will detect the amount of diamonds in the scene, and well, okay, so let's do something like this. Let's do private int collected diamonds, right, equals 0. So we just have a number of collected diamonds. Now, when they jump into a diamond, we could do collected diamonds equals collected diamonds plus. So we're adding 1 to collected diamonds. So that is essentially the same as this. Okay, we're just adding 1 to the score. And then let's do debug.log collected diamonds here. So let's do a semicolon, and then let's run this. Right. So all we're going to do is print out this collected diamonds. And as you can see, 1, and then I hit I'll clear this. When I hit this second one, it says 2. And then when I hit this third one, it says 3. So you can imagine what we can do now is say, oh, okay, well, if the number of collected diamonds is 3, right? Imagine this in your code. And this is kind of getting onto the score system that I've been kind of hinting at. Oh, well, what can we do with the score system? Essentially, we have it here. We could do something like right now, we could do something. If collected diamonds is equal to 3, in this case, right, then debug.log, open the door, show the door, whatever. And as you can imagine now, we know about set active. We could initially make the door disabled, and then we could reactivate it. Okay, so let's see if we can do this. And I'll get on to, I know it's awful to just say equals to 3. What happens if we add a new diamond? Well, suddenly we've got to change that number to 4. How do we get around that? And I'll talk about that. But yeah, look now, right? If we play our game, we hit this, it says 1. We hit this, it says 2. We hit this, and it says open the door, show the door, right? You can imagine what we can do now. We can actually show the door, right? Which is great, because now we have it's not much of a game. I know we're still flying around, and I know there's these squares which are enemies, but think about it.
You can start to see how the game kind of is shaping up to be a finalized game, how each kind of element is kind of working.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, last time we talked about polish, right? Usually as game developers, we make something like this that has all the functionality built into it, but isn't much of a game, isn't polished. But adding the polish, we could very easily think about it, right? We could take this right now and make it into something that looks more like a game pretty easily, you know? So like all the core functionality is built in there. We are collecting diamonds, we're adding one to a score. If that score is equal to a certain number, we're doing something. It's pretty straightforward to take that and actually make it into a little game, right? Which is I suppose what we're kind of going to get onto in future episodes. But imagine this, okay, right? So just before we finish, right, let's make let's make a circle. Right now, this circle again, this is going to represent our door, okay? So this is our door, right? It's I know it's a circle, right? But we can change it to a picture of a door.
With us and shapes.
Yeah,
this is going to be a running theme. I can already. It's 5 episodes in, and
yeah, we just talk so much about shapes. Yeah, so we could set this door to initially be deactivated, right? So initially, we're not going to see this door. We're not going to collide with this door. Nothing's going to happen with this door. And as you can see, this is grayed out. This door is disabled, right? We can't actually see it in the environment. So we can add another variable, just like we did. Do you remember in player death detection, we made a public game object thing that we could drag stuff into? Do you remember in the inspector? We can do the same thing, right? But we can call this door object, okay? And then we're going to drag our door object into this thing in the inspector. And then here, instead of open the door, show the door, we can do essentially the same thing as we did here. So we can say the door object, not the collision.game object, because that's the diamond we're colliding with. Door object dot set active true, because it's disabled. We want to actually show it, okay? And all we're doing here is we're just reactivating it, okay? So another thing I've got to say, by the way, is on the character, we have these things. If it says none game object, just make sure you actually assign something to that, because otherwise it won't work. Yeah. So you have to put something in there. I'm going to drag the door object and put it into here. So now the script knows what we're talking about. When we say door object, it means this door object here. Okay. Now, just to show you that this does in fact work, well, it's pretty confident of me to say.
No.
But you know, here we are. The door is somewhere here, isn't it? It's somewhere around here. It's not there. Nothing's happening. If we hit this diamond, we collect all 3 diamonds. Now you can see the door. I mean, the door's in front of us, but it's shown, you know, and that's essentially the game, right? We're pretty much there. We need to do things like, okay, well, if you've died and there's 3 diamonds here, if you've died and collected 1 diamond, then get rid of the fact that you've collected a diamond already. Respawn the diamond. We get onto that. But you know, these are just little things that we can fix in future episodes. The main core of collecting diamonds and showing a door when you've got 3 diamonds or whatever. Also, yeah, by the way, this 3, it's bad practice to put this 3 here. I suppose, I mean, I think we can go over, can't we, Danny? We can.
I think we can, Ben.
Yeah. So yeah, I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but let's say instead of 3, we just had a variable with a name, right? And we call it diamond count, right? Now, obviously, it's going to throw errors because it's going to be like, what the hell is this diamond count?
That's a new thing.
Yeah. So what we can do is we can make another variable called diamond count and set this initially to 0.
There are geese. I don't know if you heard that, but there are geese. There's a flock of geese flying over my house currently.
All right.
I don't know if my microphone picked up on that.
No,
but it was such a strange
I can
noise.
hear it, yeah. So we could do it by the way of actually make, you know, in the inspector, we could turn this to 3, and then when we put another diamond in, we could go back and go, oh, okay, now it's 4. We could do it that way, but like I said in previous episodes, as game developers, we're pretty lazy and we don't want to do that kind of stuff, right? So here's the question. Is there a way we can automatically detect how many diamonds are in the scene? I mean, that would be great, wouldn't it? Well, think about this, right? We have just put in these 3 diamonds, right? All have the same, they all have the same tag, right? This one has the tag diamond. This one has the tag diamond. This one has the tag diamond. Nothing else in this scene apart from the diamonds, has the tag diamond. The character doesn't. It's untagged. The camera doesn't. It's main camera. Enemy is, well, enemy and respawn point is untagged. Okay, only the diamonds have the tag diamond. So if there was a way that we could say, okay, get everything in the scene with the tag diamond, okay, and I want the number of them, please. That would be a way of automatically detecting how many diamonds we have in the scene. We could add as many diamonds as we liked, right? And it would just automatically do it for us. That's great. I love it because I'm lazy, right? I don't want to keep going back to this character and going, oh, I've put in another diamond. Oh, right, I've got to put that up to 5.
Well, especially if you end up having like loads of diamonds in your scene, you don't want to have to count each individual one because that just too much work, you know.
Exactly. Yeah. So how do we do that? How can we say, let's put in the start function again. Jesus. Now the start function, do you remember it's called when we start the game, hence the name. It's the start function. It's called when we press play or we run the game. Okay, so what we want to do essentially is say diamond count equals something here, right? What is that something? Well, I love this, right? There's game object dot find game objects with tag. So this is going to get every object. As you can see, it says returns an array of active game objects tag. That's not the best English, but it basically tag to tag. That's not great English, but essentially it just returns an array of objects with that tag. Now, if you don't know what an array is and stuff, it's just a collection of things. And if you're still a bit,
it's like a table. Strange. No, that's a different thing. The way I imagine arrays is like you have a table and there's just a lot of like in your column you have a lot of different numbers in there. It just stores that into one like kind of I have a variable called the diamond count. It just stores each diamond in the rows within that one column. Because then you could have another column called enemy count, and that could just be all the different enemies. So it's just a collection basically.
That's what it is. It's just a collection. It's the way I like to think of it, I suppose, is kind of, we have variables and they can only store one thing, right? Diamond count, for example, if you look over diamond count here, this can only ever store one number. Is there a way we can say to this, actually, I want you to store 2 or 3 numbers? You could say, well, Ben, you don't need that. You can just do private int diamond count, diamond count 2 equals 1. And now I have 2 variables. But what if I wanted to add 500 of these? Sure, you could sit here all day and add all of them until you get to diamond count 500. But wouldn't it be much easier if you could just say, look, there's a variable here and I want to store loads of stuff in it. Okay, and that's where Danny was talking about table. It's kind of like a table. It's like a spreadsheet. You have columns and stuff. The way I like to think of it is like a that's a very loud motorbike outside. like a stack of books, right? It's essentially it's a collection of books. It's not just one book, it's a collection of books, and it's probably not a great analogy there, but that's all an array is. And if you still struggle with the idea of an array, have a look we cover it quite extensively in our Python programming series, but there are loads of other tutorials out there on C#, so have a look at those. But all this does is it just returns a collection of the things with the game object tag, with the game object tag name, whatever, right? So I could put in diamond into here and it's going to give us all the game objects, right? All the game objects with that tag diamond. As you can see, it says cannot implicitly convert type game object array to int, and that's because this is a number and expects a number on this side. And we have an array. So how do we get the number of things in an array? Well, we do dot length. So this thing here is going to be the length, the amount of things that have the tag diamond. That's all this is saying. Again, if you're struggling a bit on arrays, don't worry about the syntax. Don't worry about what any of this means. All this means, this stuff I'm highlighting, this means, and I'll put it in a comment here, all of this means just the amount of things with the tag diamond in the scene. That's all it means. Okay, that's all this means here. So that's all it's saying is diamond count equals this. That's it. So now, okay, what we'll do is, I suppose I'll make the formatting just a little bit better. And I realize, we've gone 10 minutes over, but that's okay. It's all right. Let's do collected diamonds by diamond count. So we should have a 1 out of 3 style comment here. So let's have a look, and this will be hopefully the last thing we touch. I don't know, I'm a bit of a perfectionist when it comes to this kind of stuff. So yeah, hopefully when we press play and we go to the console, if I collect this diamond, it will say 1 out of 3. And I died, unfortunately. 2 out of 3, 3 out of 3, and now the door again correctly thinks. If I, for example, wanted to add another diamond, all I have to do is duplicate this, okay, and then just move it maybe over here. Now we have 4 diamonds in the scene, right? And it will update itself, right? If I jump here, as you can see, it says 1 out of 4. I can collect these 3 diamonds here. Okay, we've got 3 out of 4 diamonds, and then finally, I collect that, and I can go to the door. So, yeah, pretty much. But what I wanted to cover today, we have covered, which is collision detection and collecting the diamonds. But we are going to kind of refine that in the future. So yeah, we're going to do a little bit of polishing in the next few episodes. So don't worry about it.
It's a very interesting episode today. Yeah, it's cool. So thank you everyone for coming to today's episode. We will repeat we're having our weekly schedule of every Wednesday at 4 p.m. So we hope to see you in the 6th episode of the Ben and Danni show. We hope you have a good evening, and we'll say our goodbyes. Yeah. Bye, everyone. Bye.